Welcome back, scholars. This is your day 64 e-learning lesson. Today we're going to continue with the Q1 synthesis essay that you started 2 classes ago. We're going to continue with the composing phase today. In all, today's lesson, we're going to do 3 things. Start with the vocabulary practice quiz. Many of you have been asking me about that. I want everyone to complete it today. Then we're going to get into the composing phase of that Q1 synthesis essay. And then finally, the AP Lang progress check number 3. If you haven't done that yet, you'll need to do that today. All right, let's go ahead and start with that practice quiz. You should have been studying that assigned vocab list in vocabulary.com for a few weeks now. It's been assigned to you for about 3 weeks now. Remember, there's 100 words total from our next novel that we're going to be reading, The Great Gatsby. Today, I want you to go ahead and take that practice quiz. It is not optional. Please go ahead and do that. The practice quiz does require the use of the lockdown browser, and so you might be prompted, if you haven't used it yet, you might be prompted to download the browser or download the extension so that you can use it. The practice quiz has 10 questions, and you're only given 4 minutes. The timer goes really fast, as you can imagine, but honestly, it should be no problem if you know the word like you should. It's multiple choice and it's vocabulary comprehension. That should not take for very long processing time. The really fast timer, is designed to prevent you from feasibly looking up the answers as we go. So if you're wondering, hey, why am I only giving you 20 seconds per question? Well, that's the reason right there. Lastly, this is a practice quiz I want you to take today. It is not graded. If you're wondering, the graded quiz will be on Friday. All right, at this time, go and complete that practice quiz now. Pause the video and do that before moving on to anything else in this lesson. All right, thank you for completing that practice quiz. Next, let's go ahead and move on to the work we've been doing on the synthesis essay over the wind farms prompt. We're going to continue with the composing phase. Last time you should have finished up the planning phase. You should have a clear idea of what you want to write about. The 3 steps of the composing phase are: Step 9, compose the introduction; Step 10, compose the body paragraphs; and Step 11, compose the conclusion. Should look pretty familiar. Those are basically the same 3 steps for every essay that I teach. This time around, since we are not in school, we cannot use those lined pages, so you're going to be able to type this. I know that probably makes some of you very happy. We're going to type this in a Google Doc. I've made available an MLA template in Canvas there. Please use the Google Doc MLA template. In fact, if your work is not MLA formatted, I won't even look at it. I'll just type a 0 on it and a note that says this isn't MLA formatted. So that is a non-negotiable. It's got to be MLA format. Make sure that when you open up the new document in the MLA template, make yourself a copy of that. Fill out the heading, fill out the header as instructed, and you do have to give your essay a title since this is MLA. Again, on the actual exam, you do not need to give your essay a title, but since we have the time and we are typing this, we're going to go ahead and do full MLA format. The title should be something descriptive but specific. A good title for this kind of essay could be something as simple as an examination of the factors pertaining to the development of wind farms. Okay, that's all it needs to be, something that describes what the heck the essay is, but does so specifically. A bad title would be something like this: Synthesis Essay, or Synthesis Essay number 1, or just Essay. Don't do that. That's a bad title that doesn't really tell me what the heck the essay actually entails. All right, one more thing before we get going here. I am going to take you guys through some steps in the composing process. Once again, do not copy my ideas, do not copy my language, because that is not helping you develop these skills at all. All right, let's get into step 9, composing that introduction. You want to begin your introduction just like the Q3 with a statement that engages the reader. We sometimes call that a hook statement. Again, the hook does not have to be anything creative or cute. It just needs to be engaging in some way, something to mentally engage the reader's mind. Usually, as I told a lot of you in conferences, something concrete can often help with that, something the reader can see or otherwise experience or perceive with their senses. That's a good way to kind of hook the reader in. In fact, I'll show you in my sample how I've done that exact thing. You also, in your introduction, want to establish what the topic at hand is, in this case, wind farms, and the difficulties or issues associated with them. And then lastly, state your thesis at the end of that introduction. Okay, so here is the beginning of my introduction. A few summers ago, my family and I were driving through Southern California on a road trip. We were just outside of Los Angeles when I was struck by an amazing sight. Hundreds of gleaming white towers topped with whirling propellers, blanketing the low brown mountains for miles along Interstate 10. It was beautiful, such an elegant compromise of human needs and nature's offerings, and so very different from the dingy smokestack-lined coasts of my childhood home in Houston. So you see, I've started off with a very different kind of hook this time from what I did with the Q3. I wanted to demonstrate a new technique. This is a narrative. A narrative is basically just telling a story, and you can use it in a lot of different ways for a lot of different rhetorical purposes. Here I'm using it as my hook for a few reasons. One, it's a story, and stories are naturally engaging. And two, if you tell a story right, it should include a lot of concrete details. And concreteness is another thing that's very engaging in a hook. Moving on from that opening narrative, I transition into establishing the topic of this particular essay, which is about wind farms and wind power. I wondered why more places in the U.S. couldn't look like this, why so much of our energy had to come from igniting fuel or damming up rivers, why we couldn't simply harvest what our planet gives us freely instead of ripping it out of mountains or bedrock shale. So again, since I've started in a very different way, my transition is not so straightforward. I haven't mentioned wind energy is the topic or anything so straightforward as that. I'm just trying to transition into my thesis, which we saw in the last lesson. And here's that thesis. Setting aside the political disputes surrounding America's energy production, the case for wind energy is strong. However, there are some factors that stakeholders must consider before investing in wind power, including potential environmental, public health, and economic concerns. Once again, just like with all of my essays, the thesis does not look exactly like it looks in my planning. And that's because in the planning, I'm just using that working thesis. I've got the same ideas as from my planning, but I've rephrased it in such a way that flows with my entire introduction. All right, so go ahead and compose your introduction paragraph now. Feel free to try my narration technique if a particular anecdote comes to you. Otherwise, there's any number of ways that you can lead off a paragraph, just as long as you're following the three parts that I outlined earlier, starting with the hook, transition into the topic, and then your thesis. All right, now that you have composed that introduction, step 10, compose your body paragraphs. Again, as I've said before, there's no required structure for this particular essay, but feel free to use that classical model once again if you got some use out of it last time, or feel free to use elements from the classical model. You don't have to use all of them. You can kind of pick and choose or move them around even. The body paragraphs, whatever you decide to do, should methodically develop all of your ideas in your thesis. Each paragraph should lead off with a topic sentence and focus on fully developing the idea in that topic sentence. When you start a new idea, start a new paragraph. So once again, there are no specific counts for how many paragraphs you need in this. Just every time you're starting a new idea, start a new paragraph. All right, let's take a look at my thesis one more time because I want to show you how your body needs to be organized around supporting all of the ideas or developing all the ideas in that thesis. So here was my final thesis. Setting aside the political disputes surrounding America's energy production, the case for wind energy is strong. However, there are some factors that stakeholders must consider before investing in wind power, including potential environmental, public health, and economic concerns. So if I'm going to organize my body around supporting this idea, I first need to break it down and figure out just what are the specific ideas that I'm trying to support here. I lead off that statement with setting aside the political disputes, and I really am going to set those aside. I don't need to actually write about them in my essay. I'm acknowledging up front in my thesis that that's not what my essay is about, so of course there's no reason for me to write about it. But I go from there into saying that the case for wind energy is strong. And that's going to be what I need to support first in my body. So I'll probably do one full paragraph to argue that. Then, in my thesis, I state that stakeholders must consider environmental concerns. I'll need to do at least one body paragraph for that. I also say that stakeholders must consider public health concerns, so I'll need a body paragraph for that. And finally, another body paragraph for the economic concerns. So when you're figuring out how to organize your essay, the number one thing is just trying to anticipate what your reader needs. What is the best way to get your reader from point A to point Z? And a lot of times your thesis can help you do that. What are the specific ideas in your thesis that you need to support? All right, so one more thing. Wanted to show you guys this. This was from my outline that I showed you in the previous lesson. I did actually make a change to this outline as I started writing the body. And that's something very important for you to keep in mind as well. If you're writing your body, you should not lock yourselves into the outline that you've created. If a new idea occurs to you or a new pattern of organization occurs to you, change it on the fly. On my new version, as I started writing the body, I decided that all of the source F ideas I wanted to include in paragraph 5 actually would go better in paragraph 2. And so then that left me with no source information for paragraph 5, but that's okay. I'm instead just going to supplement with my own evidence and reasoning. All right, let's go and take a look at my first body paragraph. Here's my topic statement. The benefits of wind energy are obvious. Okay, nice and open-ended, but it is a supportable statement. I'm going to follow that up with some specific reasoning from my own knowledge, that it is waste-free, completely renewable, and, as evidenced by countries like Norway and China in recent years, capable of supplying significant portions of a nation's energy needs. From there, I'm going to move on to actually getting into some source evidence. Wind turbines also produce more energy more efficiently than any other widely used method, over 30 times more efficient than natural gas and over 40 times more efficient than coal. And you see I've cited source F in parentheses there. Moving on, I cite another bit of information from source F, and at less than half the cost of solar power and only $2 more per megawatt hour, that's about 2% more to produce than coal, that's from source F, wind energy is among the cheapest means of energy production available. All right, note where I included my citation there. I included it after the idea that I pulled from that source. This final idea that wind energy is among the cheapest means of energy production available, that's a conclusion that I'm drawing. The source F is just a graph. It's not actually saying that, it's just giving me the raw data. So I want to make sure that I attribute the right idea to the right thing, because if I'd put source F at the end of the sentence, it would have implied that source F told me that wind energy is among the cheapest means of energy production, and that's just something I'm inferring. All right, finishing up that paragraph. Given all its advantages and given our current climate crisis, which has been caused in part by emissions from the coal-fired power plants that, according to source A, made up over 50% of U.S. energy production in 2005, wind energy seems overwhelmingly to be the most economical and responsible way to power our electricity-hungry society. So there again, I've used another bit of source information there. In all, I'm actually 2/3 of the way to my 3-source requirement because I I used ideas from source F and source A in this paragraph. After this paragraph, I need to move on to the next part, which is getting into the actual different concerns that stakeholders need to take into consideration. And so I created a short paragraph to kind of transition between this idea that wind energy is kind of this obvious thing that we need to pursue to the specific concerns that we have to keep in mind when we pursue it. So I wrote this: wind power is not without its problems, however. Unlike more common means of power generation like coal, natural gas, or nuclear, Wind energy cannot be produced in a plant. It requires wind farms, vast, sprawling sites that can take up hundreds or even thousands of acres of land. Finding the right location for a wind farm poses unique logistical obstacles, many of which are not immediately obvious. So right there, just a short paragraph about the specific logistical problems, and that sets up the specific problems pertaining to location. All right, and here is that next paragraph dealing first with environmental obstacles. The first potential obstacles are ecological. Wind turbines with their massive spinning blades have been known to kill birds and bats in flight, from source B. So their placement in certain areas could be harmful to those animal populations. Furthermore, the installation of wind turbines requires laying heavy concrete foundations to support the massive towers. In desert areas where there are few windbreaks, the excavation process could cause land erosion, from source B. While minor, these ecological risks should nevertheless be considered when deciding on where wind farms are placed. From there, I just move on to the next set of dangers with a nice little transition phrase. Beyond the environmental dangers, wind farms can also pose risks to public health, and so on and so forth. I draw from source C, I think, for information on that. So there you have it, my essay so far. For today's lesson, what I'd like you to do is just compose the first body paragraph. Of course, once you've composed that introduction, compose just that first body paragraph, and we'll call the essay done for today. All right, lastly, progress checks 1 through 5 do still need to be finished by Friday. 1 and 2 should be done already. They were assigned a long time ago, and if you haven't done those yet, boy, you are behind. Go ahead and complete progress check number 3 today, and you can kind of guess where this is going from here. You'll complete 4 tomorrow, 5 on Friday. Again, that is if you haven't done these already. So at this time, go ahead and head out to the AP Classroom page and complete your AP Lang progress check number 3 if you have not done so already. All right, scholars, that's it for today. I know that's a lot of things, but we do have to get through that Q1 essay. Just keep reminding yourself that we are planning for a big exam. We are practicing for that exam, and we all want to do really well on that. So please, if you have any questions, continue emailing me. Thank you for those who have been patient as we started up today. There was a lot of glitches in Canvas this morning, but it settled down after that. So again, if you have questions, please contact me, and I'll see you when I see you.